You're not weak. You're just fighting battles you were never meant to win, with weapons you were never meant to use. Stop trying to be fearless. Fear is information. Stop trying to never fail. Failure is feedback. Stop trying to need no one. Isolation is ego, not strength. The entire framework you've been operating under is backwards. Weakness isn't the problem. Your relationship with it is. I'm about to dismantle everything you think you know about being strong and show you why the people calling you weak are usually the ones most terrified of their own fragility. This isn't motivation. This is permission to stop performing and start building something real. You clicked on this video because you're tired of feeling like you're not enough, tired of comparing yourself to others and coming up short, tired of starting things and not finishing them, tired of knowing you're capable of more but not knowing how to access it, tired of the voice in your head that says you're too weak for this. Here's what no one tells you. Weakness isn't a character flaw. It's unprocessed potential. Every area where you feel weak is actually an area where you haven't been given the right tools, the right perspective, or the right permission to build strength. The myth I'm destroying today is this, that strong people don't experience weakness. That's a lie that keeps you stuck. Strong people experience weakness constantly. They've just learned to metabolize it differently. They don't ignore it, deny it, or shame themselves for it. They use it. This video will teach you 3 things that will fundamentally shift how you see yourself. How to identify the difference between real weakness and learned helplessness. One is temporary and fixable. The other is a story you're telling yourself. Why your attempts to toughen up are actually making you more fragile, and what to do instead. The exact process for converting weakness into strength, not by eliminating it, but by integrating it. You'll walk away understanding that you're not weak because you struggle. You're weak because you've been struggling alone, in the dark, with the wrong map. Once you see the real map, everything changes, and you can't unsee it. Let me show you what weakness actually looks like when you stop judging it and start learning from it. There was a soldier in my command, young, eager, trained in everything we could teach him. He knew the tactics, the formations, the weapons. On paper, he was ready. But the first time he entered real combat, he froze. Not completely, but enough. His hands shook so badly, he could barely hold his weapon. His breathing went shallow and quick. He made mistakes that nearly cost lives, including his own. He survived, but barely. After the battle, he came to me in shame. I could see it written all over him. He expected me to dismiss him, demote him, tell him he didn't have what it takes. His voice was quiet, almost breaking when he said, "I'm weak." I thought I was ready, but I'm not. I'm a coward. I could feel the weight of that word on him. Coward. He'd labeled himself, sentenced himself before I'd even spoken. I asked him one question. Did you run? He looked confused, like he didn't understand what I was asking. No, but he started to say. I interrupted him. Did you abandon your post? Did you hide while others fought? Did you make the choice to give up? No, he said, but I was terrified. I couldn't control it. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I made mistakes. I almost got people killed. Good, I told him. That means you're not broken. Your body was doing exactly what it's designed to do when facing death. The weakness you're describing isn't weakness, it's intelligence. Your nervous system was screaming, "This is dangerous," because it is dangerous. War is dangerous. Combat is terrifying. Every cell in your body was trying to keep you alive. The question isn't whether you feel fear. The question is whether you let fear make your decisions. He stared at me like I'd just spoken a different language. I kept him, trained him differently. Instead of teaching him to suppress the fear, to push it down, to pretend it wasn't there, I taught him to expect it, recognize it, and act anyway, not despite the shaking, with the shaking. I told him, your hands will shake. That's fine. You can still hold a weapon with shaking hands. Your breath will quicken. That's fine. You can still think with quick breath. Your heart will pound. That's fine. You can still move forward with a pounding heart. 3 months later, he was one of my most reliable warriors. Not because he stopped being afraid. The fear never left. The shaking never completely went away. But his relationship with it changed. He stopped believing that being afraid meant he was weak. He stopped thinking that physical symptoms of fear meant he was broken or incapable. He learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action in the presence of fear. That soldier taught me something profound. Most people aren't weak. They just think that feeling weakness means being weak. And that confusion destroys them because they spend all their energy fighting their own natural responses instead of using that energy to move forward despite them. They think the goal is to not feel afraid, to not feel tired, to not feel overwhelmed. But that's not the goal. That's impossible. You're human. You will feel all of those things. The goal is to feel them and keep moving anyway. You do this too. You feel anxious before something important and think, I'm not ready. But anxiety isn't evidence that you're not ready. It's evidence that you care about the outcome. You struggle with something and think, I'm not good enough. But struggling isn't evidence of inadequacy. It's evidence that you're attempting something difficult. You need help and think, I'm pathetic. But needing help isn't evidence of weakness. It's evidence that you're human, and the task requires more resources than one person has. Weakness isn't the feeling. Weakness is believing the feeling is permanent and letting it stop you. Weakness is deciding that because you feel incapable right now, you are incapable forever. That's the lie. Feelings are temporary. They come and go like weather. You can feel weak in this moment and be building strength in the same moment. Those two things aren't contradictory. But there's another kind of weakness that's even more dangerous, and most people can't see it. I knew a general who never showed weakness. Never. Didn't matter if he was injured, exhausted, grieving. He was stone, unshakable, unmovable. His men admired him. His enemies feared him. He was the definition of strength, at least according to everyone watching. He never complained, never asked for help, never admitted doubt. He was the picture of what we're taught strength should look like, until the day he shattered. And it wasn't during battle. It wasn't when his men were watching. It wasn't even during a crisis. It was during peace. A minor setback, something that should have been manageable, routine even, and he completely fell apart. Couldn't function. Couldn't make decisions. Couldn't even get out of bed. It was like watching a dam break. All the pressure he'd been holding back for years came flooding out at once, and it destroyed him. Not the enemy, not the war, his own refusal to be human. You know what happened? He'd been so committed to never being weak that he never learned how to process weakness. He treated it like an enemy to be defeated instead of information to be integrated. So every moment of doubt, every flash of fear, every wave of fatigue, every pang of grief He shoved it down, locked it away, pretended it wasn't there. He built this perfect image of invulnerability, and everyone believed it, including him, until the foundation couldn't hold anymore. It accumulated years of unprocessed weakness, unacknowledged pain, unfelt feelings, building pressure, layer upon layer, until the container couldn't hold it anymore. And when it broke catastrophically. He lost his command, lost his reputation, nearly lost his life, all because he thought strength meant never bending. The truly weak thing wasn't feeling those feelings. It was refusing to acknowledge them. Because when you refuse to acknowledge weakness, you don't eliminate it. You just lose the ability to work with it. It goes underground and runs your life from the shadows. It makes your decisions without you even knowing. It sabotages you in ways you can't predict because you've refused to see it. I see this everywhere. People who pride themselves on never crying until they have a complete breakdown and can't stop. People who never admit they're struggling until they can't get out of bed and don't know why. People who refuse to be vulnerable with anyone until they explode and damage every relationship they have. People who say, "I don't need anyone, I've got this," until they find themselves completely alone and drowning. The illusion of invulnerability is the most dangerous weakness there is, because it prevents you from building actual resilience. See, actual resilience comes from bending and returning, over and over, like bamboo in the wind. The bamboo bends almost to the ground in a storm, but it doesn't break. And when the storm passes, it returns to standing. That's resilience. But if you won't bend, if you insist on being rigid and unbreakable, you don't stay strong. You just delay the break until it's catastrophic. Here's what I need you to understand. Admitting weakness in the moment is what prevents weakness from defining you long term. The general who could say, "I'm struggling today," would have been stronger than the general who said, "I never struggle." Because one is working with reality and the other is working against it. And reality always wins. Always. You can fight it for a while. You can pretend. You can perform. But eventually, reality will have its way. The only question is whether you work with it or against it. So if weakness isn't what we think it is, what is it really? And how do we work with it instead of against it? These are the truths about weakness that will set you free. You're not weak. You have areas of weakness. That's a completely different thing. When you say "I'm weak," you're making it your identity. It becomes who you are, unchangeable, permanent, fixed. It's like writing your name in stone. This is me. This is all I am. This is all I'll ever be. But when you say, "I'm weak at this specific thing right now," you're making it information. And information can be used. Information can guide you. "I'm weak" is a prison sentence. "I'm weak at managing conflict" is a roadmap. See the difference? One closes every door. The other points to exactly which door to walk through. The moment you get specific about your weakness, it stops being this overwhelming, shameful thing and starts being a problem you can solve. You can learn conflict resolution. You can read books about it. You can practice. You can get help from someone who's good at it. You can fail and try again. But first, you have to be honest about where the weakness actually is. Most people stay weak because they won't get specific. They just feel generally inadequate, generally not enough, and that vagueness keeps them stuck. Because you can't fix vague. You can't improve not enough. What does that even mean? How do you measure it? How do you know if you're getting better? You don't. So you just stay in this fog of inadequacy, feeling bad about yourself, but never actually addressing anything. But you can absolutely improve. I struggle with saying no to people. That's specific. That's measurable. You can practice saying no in small situations. You can notice when you want to say no, but don't. You can explore why it's hard. You can build that muscle. Same with I avoid difficult conversations, or I procrastinate when I'm afraid of failing. Those are workable. Those give you somewhere to start. Name the weakness specifically, and it becomes something you can work with instead of something that works against you. This is the first shift. From I am weak to I am weak at this specific thing right now. That little shift changes everything. Everyone wants to be strong. Nobody wants to be weak. But here's what they don't tell you. If you only develop strength and never acknowledge weakness, you don't become powerful. You become brittle. Think about materials. The strongest steel isn't the hardest steel. Pure hardness cracks under pressure. The strongest steel has the right amount of flexibility built into it. It can absorb impact. It can bend slightly without breaking. That's what makes it strong. Same with people. If you build your entire identity around being strong, invulnerable, needing nothing from anyone, never showing pain, never admitting struggle, you create a structure with no flexibility. You're building yourself like glass. Beautiful, clear, impressive. But the moment life applies real pressure, and it will, you crack because you've never learned how to bend. You've only learned how to be rigid. The people who last, who endure real hardship without losing themselves, who face tragedy and trauma and somehow keep going, aren't the ones who never feel weak. They're the ones who felt weak 1,000 times and learned that feeling weak doesn't kill you. It teaches you. It shows you where you need support, where you need to adapt, where you need to grow, where you need help. Weakness isn't the opposite of strength. It's the raw material strength is built from. Think about it. Every strong muscle was once weak and had to be torn down through exercise to grow back stronger. Every skilled person was once incompetent and fumbling and making embarrassing mistakes while they learned. Every wise person was once ignorant and confused and asking questions that seemed stupid. Every brave person was once terrified and did the thing anyway. Weakness isn't the problem. Refusing to move through it is. Refusing to acknowledge it is. Refusing to work with it is. That's what keeps you stuck. Not the weakness itself, but your relationship with it. Here's an uncomfortable truth. The areas where you're weakest are usually the areas where you refuse to ask for help. Not because help isn't available, not because you actually have to do it alone, but because asking for help feels like admitting defeat. So you struggle in isolation, reinventing wheels, making preventable mistakes, taking 10 times longer than necessary, exhausting yourself, all to protect your ego from the imagined humiliation of needing someone. This is insane. It's also extremely common. I see it constantly. People would rather suffer alone than ask for help. People would rather fail quietly than succeed with support. Because somehow we've been taught that needing help equals being weak. But that's backwards. Every strong person I've ever known was strong, partly because they knew when to ask for help. They didn't see it as weakness. They saw it as strategy. Why struggle for 3 months to figure out something someone else could teach you in 3 hours? Why waste precious energy solving a problem someone else has already solved? That's not strength. That's stubbornness, pretending to be independence. Real strength is knowing what you don't know, knowing what you can't do alone, knowing when bringing someone else in will make you more effective, not less. Real strength is saying, I need help with this, without shame, without apology, just as a statement of fact. The people who say, I don't need anyone aren't strong. They're scared. Scared of being seen as inadequate. Scared of being vulnerable. Scared of owing someone something. Scared of dependence. Scared of rejection. And that fear keeps them weak because they cut themselves off from the resources that would actually make them stronger. Think about it. If you're trying to build something and you refuse to use tools because using tools would be cheating or weak, you're just making your life harder for no reason. Help is a tool. Other people's knowledge is a tool. Collaboration is a tool. Community is a tool. Why would you refuse to use the tools available to you? Asking for help isn't weakness. Refusing to ask for help when you need it is. That's the weakness. The stubborn, ego-driven refusal to work with reality. Reality includes other people. Reality includes resources. Reality includes the fact that you're not supposed to do everything alone. Whatever you can't talk about has power over you. Whatever you have to hide, whatever you're ashamed of, whatever you pretend isn't there, that's where you're actually weakest. Not because the thing itself is so terrible, but because hiding it takes enormous energy. Think about secrets. Think about the energy it takes to maintain a lie, to remember who knows what, to manage your image, to make sure no one sees the real you, to keep track of what you've told different people, to monitor your words constantly. It's exhausting. And every ounce of energy you spend hiding is energy you can't spend building. Every bit of mental bandwidth devoted to maintaining the performance is bandwidth you can't use for actual growth. You're hemorrhaging energy on concealment when you could be using that energy for creation. The paradox is this. The moment you stop hiding your weakness, it loses most of its power over you. When you say out loud, I'm terrible with money, or I struggle with commitment, or I'm afraid of failure, something shifts. It stops being this shameful secret that defines you in the dark and becomes just a fact you can work with, a fact that's manageable. I've seen people transform overnight, not because they fixed their weakness, but because they stopped pretending it didn't exist. The relief alone, the relief of not having to maintain the performance, gave them back enough energy to actually address the problem. They'd been spending 90% of their energy hiding and 10% trying to improve. Once they stopped hiding, they had 100% for improvement. What are you hiding? What are you afraid people will see? What do you hope no one ever finds out about you? That's your work. Not fixing it immediately, that's overwhelming and probably impossible. Just being honest about it. First with yourself, then maybe with one trusted person. Just stop carrying it alone in the dark. Watch what happens when you do. You'll be shocked how much power you get back. You'll be shocked how much lighter you feel. You'll be shocked how most people respond not with judgment, but with relief. Because they've been hiding something too, and your honesty gives them permission to be honest. The weakness you hide owns you. The weakness you acknowledge becomes workable. That's the difference. You feel tired. That's neutral. Your body is giving you information. You need rest. Simple. Clear. Biological. But your mind interprets it. I'm lazy. Everyone else can keep going. I'm weak. What's wrong with me? And suddenly you're not just tired, you're a failure. You've turned a neutral physical state into an identity crisis. You've taken data and turned it into a story about your worth. You make a mistake. That's neutral. You tried something and it didn't work. That's just information. That's feedback. That's how learning happens. But your mind interprets it. I always mess up. I can't do anything right. I'm incompetent. Why do I even try? And now you're not learning from a mistake. You're confirming a belief about your inadequacy. Weakness is just information until you add meaning to it. And the meaning you add, shame, inadequacy, permanence, that's what actually weakens you. Not the weakness itself. The weakness is just a thing. But the story you tell about the weakness, that's what determines whether it destroys you or develops you. What if you could feel weak without making it mean something about your worth? What if you could struggle without making it mean you're broken? What if you could need help without making it mean you're pathetic? The weakness would still be there. The struggle would still be real, but it wouldn't devastate you. It would just be something to address, like hunger or cold. I'm weak in this area becomes as emotionally neutral as I'm hungry right now. Both are just states that need attention. You don't spiral into shame when you're hungry. You don't think, I'm so weak. I need food. Everyone else can go longer without eating. What's wrong with me? No. You just think, I'm hungry. I should eat. Simple. This is the shift that changes everything. From I am weak to I am experiencing weakness in this moment. One is permanent. One is your identity. One is who you are forever. The other is temporary. The other is just an experience. The other is a passing state. And that distinction is everything. Everything. So now that you understand weakness differently, what do you actually do with it? Here's how you start transforming weakness today. Grab paper. Write this at the top, where I'm currently weak. Then list everything. Don't filter. Don't judge. Don't make it neat. Just list. Physical weakness. Emotional weakness. Skills you lack. Areas where you struggle. Things you avoid. Relationships that are hard. Conversations you won't have. Truths you won't face. Be brutally specific. Not, I'm bad at relationships. That's vague and useless. Instead, I avoid conflict so problems build up. Or I choose partners who don't respect me because I don't think I deserve better. Or I shut down emotionally when criticized. Or I stay in relationships way past their expiration date because I'm afraid of being alone. See the difference? Specific, clear, workable. This is uncomfortable. Do it anyway. Because you can't address what you won't acknowledge. And once it's on paper, it stops being this overwhelming cloud of inadequacy and becomes a list. Lists are manageable. Clouds are paralyzing. You can't work with a cloud. But you can absolutely work with a list. Next to each weakness, write one small thing you could do to address it. Not fix it completely. That's overwhelming and probably impossible. Just one small action. I avoid conflict becomes start by saying one true thing that's uncomfortable this week. I procrastinate on important things becomes work on the important thing for just 10 minutes today. I never ask for help becomes ask one person, one question about something they know more about than me. Small, doable, not dramatic, not overwhelming. Just one small action. This transforms your weakness inventory into an action plan. And action is what transforms weakness into strength. Not positive thinking, not affirmations. Action. Every time you notice yourself feeling weak, incapable, inadequate, not enough, pause and ask, what's this teaching me? Can't finish the project? What's that teaching you? Maybe you need better boundaries. Maybe you took on too much. Maybe you need help. Maybe you need to break it into smaller pieces. Maybe you're afraid of completing it because then it can be judged. What's it teaching you? Struggle in conversation? What's that teaching you? Maybe you need to slow down. Maybe you're not really listening. Maybe you're so busy planning what to say next that you miss what they're actually saying. Maybe you're afraid of being wrong. Maybe you're trying to control how they see you instead of just being honest. What's it teaching you? This single question transforms weakness from something that proves you're broken into something that teaches you how to grow. It moves you from shame to curiosity. And curiosity is where all change begins. Shame closes. Curiosity opens. Shame says, "What's wrong with me?" Curiosity says, "What can I learn from this?" Completely different energy. Once, this week, ask for help with something you'd normally struggle through alone. Not because you absolutely can't do it yourself. Not because it's life or death. But because asking is the practice. Make it small if you need to. Ask a coworker to explain something you don't understand. Ask a friend for advice on something you're dealing with. Ask someone to teach you something they're good at. Ask someone to help you with a task that would be easier with two people. The content doesn't matter as much as the practice of asking. Notice what happens in your body when you ask. Notice the fear, the shame, the vulnerability, the part of you that says you should be able to do this alone. And notice that you survive it. That most people are actually happy to help. That asking doesn't make people think less of you. It usually makes them feel trusted and valued. This practice rewires your nervous system's association between asking for help and weakness. Over time, it becomes strategic instead of shameful. It becomes smart instead of embarrassing. It becomes obvious instead of terrifying. Every night for the next week, write down 3 things. One moment today I felt weak. One thing that moment taught me or revealed. One way I'm stronger because I experienced it instead of avoiding it. This practice trains your brain to see weakness as data instead of identity, to see it as temporary instead of permanent, to see it as the path to strength instead of the opposite of strength. You'll be amazed what shifts when you start tracking this. Weakness stops being this terrifying thing you have to hide and becomes just another part of being human. And once that shift happens, you've won. Because you're no longer at war with yourself. You're working with yourself. Here's what I need you to hear as we close. You came to this video because you're tired of feeling weak, tired of not being enough, tired of watching others succeed while you struggle, tired of the voice in your head that tells you you're not capable. But the reason you feel weak isn't because you actually are weak. It's because you've been measuring strength wrong. It's because you've been comparing your insides to everyone else's outsides. It's because you've been taught that strength looks like something it doesn't actually look like. Strength isn't never struggling. It isn't being invulnerable. It isn't needing no one. Strength is struggling and continuing, being hurt and healing, needing people and having the courage to ask, falling and getting back up, feeling afraid and doing it anyway, being wrong and admitting it, being lost and asking for directions. Every area where you feel weak right now is actually an area where you're brave enough to see the truth. Most people can't even do that. They hide, pretend, perform. They spend their entire lives maintaining an image. But you're here, looking at yourself honestly, admitting where you're struggling. That's not weakness. That's the beginning of real power. The old story was weak people struggle, strong people don't. The new story is everyone struggles, but strong people struggle honestly, and weak people struggle in hiding. Which one are you going to be? Are you going to keep hiding, keep pretending, keep exhausting yourself, maintaining a performance? Or are you going to be honest about where you are so you can actually get somewhere else? I am not broken by my weakness. I am informed by it. My weakness is not my identity. It's my information. Every place I struggle is showing me where to build. I'm not broken. I'm not inadequate. I'm human. And I'm learning. And that makes me stronger than anyone who's still pretending. Say that when the old shame comes back. When you catch yourself thinking I'm so weak. When you compare yourself to others and feel less than. When you mess up and want to collapse into self-hatred. Say it until you believe it. Say it until it becomes louder than the old voice. You're not weak. You're just still learning. And everyone who looks strong, they learn too. They just did it before you started watching. They struggled where you couldn't see. They cried when no one was looking. They asked for help when you weren't there. The only difference between you and them is time and honesty. That's it. If this landed, if something clicked, tell me in the comments. What's one area you're ready to stop hiding your weakness? What's one place you're ready to be honest and start building? Not to perform, not to prove anything, just to be real, just to stop carrying it alone. Subscribe if you want more of this. Not hype, not false motivation, not someone screaming at you to work harder. Just real talk about becoming actually strong instead of just looking strong. That like button? Hit it if you felt this. It tells me you're done pretending and ready for truth. You showed up here for a reason. And the reason is, you're ready. You might not feel ready. You might feel more lost than ever. But you're here. You're listening. You're considering. That's enough. That's actually everything. Now go do the work.